I'm Crystal. Thank you for watching the live sessions with NCSM. So today we have Kenneth, who is the nutritionist of National Cancer Society Malaysia. So he will share with us about how to read food label. So yeah, Kenneth, how are you?
Hi, morning, Crystal. So I was just gonna quickly to share my screen here so that everyone can see the slide. So today's we're gonna discuss mostly about shopping spree. I believe everyone is actually love shoppings. So today's we're gonna teach people on how to use your nutrition labeling. All right. So today's basically we're gonna talk about the nutrition labels of the food. I suppose whenever we go shoppings, we always see this. We like colorful stuff, right? We like green color, we like tomatoes color. So Crystal, whenever you go grocery shoppings, what are the main concerns you have? The first things that pop in your head?
Okay, so when I do shopping, do grocery shopping in supermarket, right? Actually, I will look for definitely fruits and vegetables is not the first options I will go for. I
Okay.
will actually, yeah. So I will actually go for like biscuits or the cookies area. Yeah,
Okay, so you have a sweet tooth, don't you?
yeah, you're right.
Okay, so perhaps you will also look at the packaging, whether it's like interesting or not. It looks very pretty. It looks nice to eat. Then maybe you would like to have that. Am I correct? So actually,
Sometimes,
yes,
yeah, sometimes I will look at it, but normally how I choose food is actually based on the taste and my preference.
sure.
Yeah.
You see, we have a lot of factors when it comes to making a decisions about food. It's not just like, oh, today I feel like eating this. So according to this slide, it's actually talk about what are the factors that might affect your choice when it comes to grocery shoppings. As you can see, number one, we talk about social, it's about culture. So indirectly, it's talk about food habit. So for example, you mentioned you're already used to some types of food. Whenever you go grocery shoppings, you always look for them. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about economical factor with the current situations, I believe we always very careful with spending our money. So of course, cost is one of the concerns. We want to get something very cheap, nutritious, and it's also delicious. So that would be the main, right? So also coming to the psychological factors like Crystal has shared with us earlier, sometimes mood would actually affect the type of food that you might choose. So for example, if you are really down or you are having some celebration, confectionery is always come to your mind. It's like, oh, today I want to eat some celebrations kind of food. But last but not least, today's we're going to emphasize a lot on the physical factor, which we're going to talk about skill. And actually, reading the nutrients labeling, it's one of the skills that we're going to teach you today. So the questions will be, what is a nutrition's label? So a nutrition's label technically is a label that describes the nutrients contained energy, sometimes we call kilocal, or carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Crystal, how often do you actually read the nutrition's label, or even is the audience realize whenever there's a food packaging, behind it is actually the nutrition's label rather than the cute icon or all the picture in front, right?
Yeah, actually, what's the things most attractive for me is actually the packaging of the food. So if I feel the packaging of the food is like very cute and it's very colorful, then I will go for it lah. Yeah.
Yes. So now I'm actually disclosing, instead of looking only at the front packaging, now we actually have to look at the back of the packaging. So what is the main purpose of nutrition labeling? Actually, we highlight 2 points. Number one, we want to make you easily use the information about nutrition or nutrients per se. And number two, we want the audience to make an informed choice, like how do you pick healthier food? How do you find if the logo put there, oh, this is very healthy. So we have to understand what do they mean by healthy, right? So based on the statistics conducted back in 2014, Malaysians, yes, the one that you are listening, every one of two is actually do not read the nutrition label. A lot of us have seen it, but how many of us actually read and compare or use the information to make a decision? So today we are having a call out to all the audience who's watching this Zoom meeting with us. You might want to appreciate more on the nutrition label, and we're going to teach you how are you going to use the knowledge now. All right. So to be easily discussed, if you look at the nutrition label, or if you have a kitchen very near now, you want to quickly run to your kitchen, maybe you want to grab 1 or 2 of the food package that you have with you, then we can do the practice together when it comes to the next sessions, okay? So coming for the nutrition label, easily we can actually separate into 4 parts. Number 1, we talk about servings informations, as you can see from here, number of servings, etc. Number 2, we discuss about calorie content. Everyone's want to eat something that is not fattening, am I right? So calorie is always one of the concern. Number 3, what kind of nutrients is actually in this food? And last but not least, actually what are those ingredients made up of? So remember these 4 components of a nutrition label, and we're gonna go through one by one, right? So 1 is serving information. So when we talk about servings informations, people always ask the questions to me, is like, so actually, how do I read the nutrition label? So we are giving you a step-by-step approach. Number 1, we look at servings per package. As you can see here, it says 4, which means this food actually having 4 separate servings. So the example I use here is actually a canned tuna. And if you look at serving size, it's actually 40 gram or quarter of a can. So this is actually not the recommended intake, but it's rather the usual intakes that we will take. So for example, if you purchase a can of tuna fish, most probably you're gonna split it into 4 parts and you're gonna eat only a quarter of that. So this is what we do. But you heard the word I use, usual. So sometimes unusual situation, you might end up eating 2, which is half of the can, or some even more extreme, you eat the whole can, don't you? So here is the things that we have to understand. What do you mean by servings informations? So now you remember this. Later we were gonna come back and use the serving information. So this is a can of tuna. You can separate into 4 servings. All right. So moving on next. So how much calorie do I gain if I eat this? How do I count? So remember I was telling you, remember the servings. So if you look at the package of servings and quarter, so which means by normally, we actually eat quarter of the can. So here you look at the calorie, you look at the per serving. If you eat a quarter of the can, you have 63 kilocal. If you eat half of it, so you just have to times 2, it's about 120. And if you eat the whole can by yourself, then you have to times 4. So it becomes 240. Yeah. So far, okay, Crystal? Are you catching up?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So now we are at the calorie. Moving on. What's next is about the nutrient. So some people might be very concerned about like, what is the fat content? Is it a very fattening product? Yeah, this is a usual one. We have like carbohydrates, fat, and protein. But some of the food, they also label other things like, for example, fiber, sodium, sugar, etc. So we're going to talk about details when it comes to a next session. All right. So this is the nutrients. They will actually label what are the contents of the nutrient. And as you can see, if you eat a serving of the tuna can, you actually get about 4.8 grams of protein. So this is how you read the label so far. So this is part 3. And part 4, this is something that is kind of interesting to share. So for the ingredient list in the content, it's always from the most to the least. What does it mean from the most to the least? Is actually the content. So for the nutrition, for the labeling of ingredient, it must come with the most content item in the ingredient to the list. So if you look at the ingredient here of the tuna, of course, the most content must be tuna. If it's not tuna, then maybe it's something else. So it's not so much of tuna content by itself. So if you're looking at the salt, salt is actually the least or the minimum, very minimum item in this product. So this is how you read. So now, just giving you a task, or you can do it later after the session. You quickly go and grab a bottle of your tomato sauce or chili sauce at home. You go and find out what is the number 1 ingredient in that bottle. Right, so giving you a task, Crystal, you can do it later, right? So we emphasize a lot actually on the parts of sugar, and I believe everyone's been very concerned about sugar now, right? Because it's actually, if it's overtaking, it might lead to overweight, and it also could increase other risks of diseases or non-communicable diseases, particularly like diabetes, or let's say cancer because of the overweight situation. So we're going to talk a bit more about how do you read how much sugar is in this drink or beverage. Okay, so for Malaysian, based on the latest research, 2019 National Health and Morbidity Survey, we found that whenever you drink sugary beverages, that can become in three different channels. Number one, we might drink self-prepared drinks. So like you at home, you make your own coffee, you make your own tea from scratch. Of course, you have to put some, I mean, not everyone, but of course you put some sugar to make it a bit more flavored so that it's better to taste like for a high tea afternoon. So then the next one will be, for example, carbonated drinks, or we call it soft drinks, one of the kids' favorite. So for the soft drinks, usually it's about 6 teaspoons in total for a daily consumption. So we are talking about general Malaysians who might make a drink at home in the morning, when at work during lunchtime might take a carbonated drink, or even at the tea time at work might drink something we call pre-mixed drinks. So what does it mean by pre-mixed drinks here is actually some things like we say 3-in-1 or your chocolate malt drink in a sachet, then you just make it instant. So we call it instant drinks, lah, right? So which means if Malaysians generally drink 3 of this in a day, end up you might actually drinking 12 teaspoons of sugar. So Crystal, can you visualize like 12 teaspoons of sugar is how much roughly?
I'm not really sure about this. Yeah, maybe you can share some information with me.
Yep. So that's also a difficulties whenever we try to talk to public, like, you shouldn't eat a lot of sugar, but how do you see a lot of sugar? So here comes, we say it's about a guideline, how much you are allowed to eat. So for example, we put here, based on American Heart Association, it says that for men, you can only or you shouldn't eat more than 9 teaspoons of sugar. And for women, you shouldn't eat something more than 6 teaspoons of sugar. So if you look at the right-hand side of the slide, it's like 1 full teaspoon of sugar. So this is how we count as 1 teaspoon, not the flattened one, but it's more like a mountain kind of shape, all right? Just one scoop of the tea. So 1 teaspoon is actually equivalent to 5 grams. And you have to remember this because this is how you're going to interpret or you're going to use the information on the nutrition's labeling. All right?
You know, I want to
So,
ask the question.
yes.
Yeah, why do men has much more quota compared with women? Yeah.
Very sharp, Crystal. Of course, Crystal is a sweet tooth person, is very concerned how much sugar you can take. But basically, the number of sugar allowance different is because in general, men eat more than women. Men needs more calorie than women, and therefore men actually allowed more sugar than women because we go by proportion of the number of calorie allowed. So it's not because men are more privileged, but just in general, men eat more.
Sure, thank you.
Welcome. Good question, Crystal. Right. So we're gonna try with an example. This is actually an iced lemon tea drink. So this is the back of the iced lemon tea. I suppose the front of iced lemon tea everyone see. So now I'm actually showing you the back of the iced lemon tea. So when we look at the back of the iced lemon tea, we look at the number of servings. Of course, we're gonna drink 1 can, right? Crystal, usually if you drink sugar beverages, will you finish 1 can or would you share?
No, I will finish 1 can.
Yeah, but sometimes do you share? Occasionally?
I'm I'm not really sure because half can is actually not enough for me.
True.
Hmm.
So correct. So usually people don't share their drinks. So usually you finish 1 whole drink. So based on the nutrition label at the back, you might want to ignore the one that's saying 100 ml, unless you only drink 100 ml, but you won't because you're going to finish the 1 serving, which is the whole can. So we go down to look at the sugar here. Then we find that actually this 1 liter can of our iced lemon tea contains 14.7 grams of sugar. Then remember just now the teaspoon picture in front? This one? We're talking about 5 grams. So this is why the calculation is we divide by 5 and then you have 3 teaspoons, right? So Crystal, if you remember just now, how much teaspoon a woman allowed to have every day?
6.
6 teaspoons. And here is 3 teaspoons, which means like in one day, if you drink a can of drink, there goes your 50% of allowance. All right, so you have to be a bit more careful on sugar taking. All right, so here's another example of a different drinks. So we talk about, sometimes we compare, this is actually a soya bean drink. So we always have a perceptions like, soya bean is a healthier drink, is a better drink than iced lemon tea. Am I correct? We have a perceptions like, oh, soya bean, air tebu, or we call it sugar cane drinks, maybe a little bit more healthier than the usual sweetened beverages. But look at this example. This is a soya bean drink. So if you look at one whole serving of the soya bean and you finish it, actually you have 17.5 grams of sugar. And you divide by 5, it's actually 3.5 teaspoon of sugar. So compared to the previous iced lemon tea example, which one is more? The soya bean is actually more sugar than the iced lemon tea. So here is actually the key message. Do not think or do not have the perceptions like if this kind of drinks are healthier, it means that it must have less sugar than the other. Crystal, careful with the trick, okay?
Sure.
So here is an example of illustrations of multiple sugar contents of drinks. So as you can see from the left is the list, to the right hand side to the most. So if you can see our good friends like the C drinks, the red color drinks is in the middle. So it's about here. And then on the right hand side, you have the other range of drinks. But this is actually to illustrate. In one tiny can of sugar beverage, it actually could shoot up to this high amount, right? So for example, we look at Fanta Orange. Here's about 40 grams. So if you divide by 5, it's about 8 teaspoons. And there goes your allowance. It's already exceeded your 6, right? So from here, Crystal, which will you pick? The best drinks ever?
I I mean, yeah, if according to my preference, I will go to like Coca-Cola. But yeah, because I want to keep my body healthy and beautiful and pretty. I want to yeah. Yeah, that's why I think I will go for mineral water lah.
Yes, you actually have a sharp eye. You will see that water, not necessarily mineral water, but by all means, water itself is zero sugar. So this is why we always say that if you want to drink, you always opt for sugar. But if it's too blunt, you can put some lemon slices or fruit slices to make it a bit of flavor. So here's another trick for you, Crystal, to make a better choice. But if you still crave for Coca-Cola, we always say that you might want to share a can with your friends. So you just get to taste of it. Then you actually only get half of the sugar. All right?
Yeah, thank you.
So that's another tricks that we might say sugar being camouflage. Then sometimes in the ingredient list, it's not necessary they label it as sugar. They could also use other different ingredients that is equivalent of sugar, giving you the sweetened sensation or the sweet taste that you call. So for example, you might find sucrose, dextrose, or even like syrup or honey, they could use in making the food or the beverages so that you might not find the keyword sugar. So Crystal, when we say about 4th step in the beginning, you have to check your ingredient list. So this is one of the reasons why you should check your ingredients. All right? So we have done talking a lot about sugar, and we have been emphasizing a lot like the importance of sugar, why you should read. Here comes another friends of sugar, because we always say sugar and salt. So why do we need to learn more about salt is because apparently one of the major complications we have about salt is hypertension. And we know that hypertension also might lead or calling other good friends of the other diseases that might come along. So we also might want to be very careful about our salt intake, especially now we're talking about cooking from home. Am I correct? So what is salt most about? So when we talk about the guideline of the salt, actually, according to World Health Organization, WHO, they have mentioned everyone in the world should take less than 1 teaspoon of salt, or it's also 5 grams. Crystal, do you realize that actually on the nutrition labeling, or have you even read, then you realize they actually don't put salt as a nutrient. They put it as a sodium. So this is why we also emphasize that you have to teach people, instead of looking at salt in the ingredient list, you also have to look at the nutrients component, which is the sodium. So equivalent of it is like you shouldn't eat more than 2000 milligram of sodium. So it might be a bit technical for you at the moment, but trust me, in the coming example, you will find this is very handful and very easy to read. Okay, so here's an example when we say we want to compare between products and how to make a purchase, right? So if you look at the left-hand side of the slide, we have tuna in mineral water or tuna in water per se. So we look at the focus of sodium. So this is per serving equivalent and it's only 27 milligram, right? So if you look at the right-hand side of the slide, you realize that this is chili tuna and some more with the quotas of light. And then this is actually looking at the sodiums of up to 240 milligram. So if we are comparing about serving size of 1:1 ratio, you will realize that the chili tuna is actually 10 times having more sodium than the tuna in water. I'm sure everyone's gonna be like having the impressions like, oh, tuna in water, how would it taste like? Of course, it might taste a little bit blunt for you, but you can always make some adjustment. You can put a little bit more pepper, or you can even mix some herbs when you want to eat it with your sandwich. So here comes a tips that you might able to reduce your sodium intake gradually. All right. So Crystal, are you good with this slide? So now you can actually compare between product and then you know what do you compare with. Okay, so this is whenever you can eat at home. So now everyone's gonna start like, oh, before I eat something, I'm gonna turn and then read at the nutrients label. Okay, so tuna is actually a bit about more like food. I'm gonna give another example of our good friends here. So let's say potato chips. So Crystal, do you like potato chips?
Yeah, I love it so much.
So
Yeah.
much, but do you eat it very often?
I will limit myself like twice in a month.
So
Yeah. But
occasionally we still take.
yes, yes. But I will take quite a lot at one time. Yeah, because I
Okay.
cannot control myself.
Yes, self-regulation is actually very important, but of course, I do take potato chips as well. But as we mentioned before, everything is about moderation, everything is about control, and you have to understand how much you are eating. So here comes an examples of salt in potato chips, because we always heard people say like, oh, potato chip is always very salty, it's not good for you, etc. So here comes we calculate how we want to see the salt content of the potato chips. So if we are looking at this is actually one of the home brand that we always eat. So I'm not going to mention the brand, but those people who love potato chips, if you're looking at this, you might be able to guess. Okay, so here's, we come with the exercise of the 4 steps approach. Number one, we look at the serving size. So actually, by right, everyone will eat about 30 grams at one serving. So this is actually equivalent of the small packet of your snacks that you could buy outside, like the one that we used to have when it's Children's Day. A small packet of the packaging, usually they cap it around 30 grams. So this is like the usual amount of people will eat at one time. However, if somebody like Crystal loves potato chips more, you might end up eating more. So this is actually the whole tall bottle of the potato chips, and it's actually about 5 servings inside. So if we are looking at the per servings column and we want to find the nutrients that we are targeting, so we are actually looking at sodium, and you realize that actually every servings you eat, right, end up it's actually close to about 200 milligrams of sodium, sorry, 200 milligrams of sodium. So like Crystal mentioned just now, you like it. So Crystal, is it possible that you might finish half a tall bottle by yourself?
Definitely.
Definitely. Okay, then you have to pay attention to this part, because if you eating half bottle of the potato chips, end up you're actually eating half of the entire serving of the entire bottle. So it's actually 2.4, 2.7 servings from here, right? So if you take the 2.7 servings and you multiply with the 200 milligram at the beginning, you realize that it's actually having 537 milligram. So that you might see that, oh, you might saw the percentage, but I'm just going to ask you, do you remember how much we should eat in terms of salt or sodium?
If not mistaken, is 2000 mg,
Yes,
right?
it's 2000 and you should eat less than the 2000. So if we go with the 2000, right? So by right, Crystal, if one day you are eating at this rate of your potato chips, you actually already taken 1/4 of your allowance. You already have 225%. So this haven't includes in all the other foods, the 3 meals you might have, or even some other snacks that you might be taking. So that's why, Crystal, next time share your chips with me, okay?
Sure.
So here comes to the final of the sessions. We want to share some grocery tips with the audience out there. So number one, remember to read your nutrition's label, the nutrition's fact label at the back of the packaging. Stop only looking at the front packaging, which is attractive, but also appreciate the back packaging, which label the nutrition label. Number two, if you may, always choose something that is lighter version, or they might put as low sodium or low fat product, so that you actually gradually decrease your intakes of such not say unwanted but not very good nutrients that you might want to overload your body with. And last but not least, always check the sugar and salt. And you know why? Because whenever they say this product is low fat, low sugar, or less sugar, how much actually do you mean by less? So here comes the tricks, like if people put the label of less sugar, we also have the practice of reading how much is less. All right, so this is actually the last slide of the sessions. So yeah, over to you, Crystal.
Thank you, Kenneth. Such a such a useful information. Yeah, because when we do grocery shopping, I will hesitate like about the food choices. I don't know which one to pick. Yeah, so thank you very much for your sharing. So yeah, here we just received a questions from audience. So we might need your explanations on that. Yeah, so the first question, so actually we have two questions here. So from Madam Lily Fu. So she's asking, is there any difference in taking brown sugar and rock sugar versus white sugar?
Sure. So maybe we'll talk about these questions first. So hi, ma'am Lily, thank you for the questions. It's actually a very interesting, and I believe everyone has the same concern. So when we talk about the types of sugar, so what is the main concerns about the different is because the types of sugar differentiates by the process of making it. So which means the final products came out. If it's brown, which means that they actually didn't purify or they didn't make it into a white sugar, because originally sugars are all made from sugar canes. It's always natural brown, brownish or a bit yellowish in color. So this is the main difference about types of sugar. The processing is different, so the color makes different, the product is different. But if Madam Lily, you are concerned about the nutrition factor of sugar, end up actually all sugars are rather the same because they are still sugar. So that's why whenever we talk about sugar, regardless what types of sugar, we might also want to be a bit more careful about the amount of sugar we take. Because you might heard that rock sugar or even brown sugar are better than white sugar. This is because they have a slightly higher nutrients content in terms of minerals, but I don't think any nutritionist, dietitians, or even doctor in the world would recommend their patients like, look, you are lack of mineral, please go and take some sugar. So the bottom line is, Madam Lily, do not overtake any form of sugar. But if you're concerned about types of sugar, feel free to choose the one that you feel healthier, but still don't overuse.
Thank you, Kenneth. So how about the sugar in fruit juice and how about gula melaka?
Okay, so gula melaka, I suppose the explanations will be the same as what I have talked about, but let's address about second question is the fruit juices. Okay,
Mhm.
so when it comes to fruit juices, actually those are the sugars naturally exist in our fruits, and sometimes even some vegetables, if they taste sweet, they might also have sugar. But those are the natural sugar exist in, and we call those as fructose. Of course, those are still sugar. So even though we say that fruit juice are sometimes good for everyone, for your daily, for your for your vitamin supply, but still do not overtake, because we don't believe that if it's fruit juices, for example, apple juice or orange juice or even other juices are good, we don't usually recommend you to replace that juice with water, because you might still overshoot on the sugar. At the same time, you are getting the good side like vitamins, but at the same time, you are getting all the sugar into you as well. So you might also want to go easy with the sugar. If you are not a diabetes patient, you might don't have so much concern, but if you have a diabetes condition, you might also want to be very careful, or you want to consult a nutritionist or dietitians about your fruit juices intake. Hmm.
Okay. So, Kenneth, how about jaggery sugar?
Oh,
Is
okay.
this
So actually, it's the same things about types of sugar. Everyone's been very concerned about different types of sugar, but like I have mentioned, you can use the types of sugars that you are comfortable with. But regardless what sugar you've been using, go very easy with the amount of sugar you've been putting into your food or drinks that you make at home. Mm.
okay? So yeah, so that's the question. There are the questions about sugar.
Mm.
So now there are also few questions about salt.
Mm.
So there's a questions from Madam Jelin Wong.
Mm.
Wong. So she's asking, how do we estimate sodium content in food like mee curry, nasi lemak? Because yeah, it's very hard for us to estimate because there's no nutrition level.
Mm.
So yeah, how do we
So
avoid this? Yeah.
yes, this is actually very good examples that Jeline has brought up with. So if we are looking at foods that prepare in outside the food premises, we actually do not have the food labeling. But if you are looking at big chains company or big chains coffee house, they actually have a nutrition label information available online, and actually you can get some ideas about that. So usually, if you Google some things about the nasi lemak content, or you Google about mee curry content, it wouldn't run so much away, because at the end of the day, we don't know how they prepare the food. So you can't really justify how much sugar or how much salt in those food. But if you are making from home, then you can actually control. So usually, if you are very concerned about the types of salt in nasi lemak and mee curry, I would say generally nasi lemak still okay, but mee curry, you might want to go a bit easy on the soup, because the salt content most probably will be remaining on the soup rather than the noodles itself. All right.
So is there any difference between sea salt and the original salt?
Yes, actually, there is a difference, but we have to look at what perspective of the difference. If we are talking about whether which types of salt is better, of course, we will say sea salt may be slightly better than ordinary salt, is because they have a higher mineral content. But it's not necessary that if you are able to afford a sea salt and you must buy sea salt because it's better, it's not necessary, because in terms of minerals or even other vitamins, it actually can also come from all kinds of fruit. So this is why we actually always emphasize, regardless whether you are having a medical condition or not, if you want to make a healthy diet, you should eat varieties of food so that you can get multiple sources of mineral or vitamins rather than relying on one single source. In this case, maybe we are concerned about salt. So if you are talking about sea salts and ordinary salt, by all means, go ahead and use which salt you are comfortable with. But again, you have to be careful with the amount of salt you put, because it doesn't mean that sea salt is healthier, then you just like put 2-3 teaspoons straight into the cooking. So is that okay?
Yeah, thank you, Kenneth. So another question is about sugar again. So
Okay.
what do you think about artificial sweeteners? So are they more harmful than common sugar because they are processed sugar, right?
Hmm. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. Today we have a lot of questions. I believe everyone just woke up and then maybe eating breakfast. Good questions. So thank you for the audience who asked about artificial sweetener. Whenever we address about artificial sweetener, we have to look at the main concerns about artificial sweetener, because originally this was used for the diabetes patients who cannot take sugar due to the medical conditions of their blood sugar. However, if we are talking about all kinds of artificial sweetener, At the moment, research shows that it doesn't cause any direct harmful effect if you are taking it, but come back to the rules like how much you are taking it. So if you are concerned about sugar spike in your blood sugar, or you have a conditions about diabetes, yes, you might want to opt for artificial sweetener. But it doesn't mean that because of artificial sweetener, now I can enjoy every sweet things in my life and replace all the sugar with artificial sweetener. Because again, it's the idea, moderation is still the key, regardless is good or bad. Just like the example I shared about fruit juice, is good, but doesn't mean that you should overtake.
Okay, so last questions.
Yes.
So when it comes to labeling, right? So these are the questions come from Madam Irene Yap. So when come to labeling, how about the others nutrients like fat and cholesterol? Because sometimes when we look at the food labeling, right, it's actually stated zero gram of fat or cholesterol. Is that possible?
Yes, actually, it is possible because it's either the product really doesn't have any fat, or is actually the fat content could be very minimal, or we call it very trace in the technical terms. So that those products actually doesn't contain any fat, then they could label as zero. This is possible actually. It depends on what types of product they make. So sometimes it's possible because there's impossible that all kinds of products will contain all kinds of nutrients. There might be a variety, and it depends on what is the content of the food item. Mm.
Okay, thank you so much, Kenneth. Yeah, so I believe every one of us get at least a little benefits from this.
Yes, I hope that everyone have actually gained more through this, and then you.
Advice you want to give to.
Yes, the line is breaking. Yes, I'm back. Hi.
Hello, yeah.
Yes.
So any advice you want to give to public before ending?
If we are talking about grocery shoppings, I will share one ultimate tips with everyone so that whenever we purchase something and it puts there like, oh, this product is, let's say, very low in sugar or is less sweet, you might want to pay extra attention to the content because sometimes the less sweet is actually comparing with their similar product, but not to the others product that you might purchase. So the back principle will be still check the nutrition label of each product and pick whatever products that suit you. If you have a conditions or you have a concerns about sugar, about fat, about salt, then you might want to put a little bit more attention to those nutrients have label behind. If you're still a bit confused or you have not very sure, feel free to ask questions and then we'll come back and address to those questions in the comment, okay?
Okay, so thank you very much. So the live session is come to the end. So I hope everyone is good today and learn something today.
Yes.
So thank you everyone.
Yes, thank you everyone for asking questions and being very interactive through the sessions. I really like it. So if you have more questions, feel free to ask the questions at the comment. And thank you, Crystal, for moderating the sessions. Thank you very much.